We were talking about that question that I
How
had
do I
asked.
live this life?
How do
I live this life? You guys learned about how I started living this life,
So
or at least I'm trying.
Yep.
well, you got to be careful on those legs. I seen him from a distance, and
Trust me, Quentin does that every day,
Ooh,
and she's holding up.
I don't know about all that, but
They're just built different.
we're gonna have to show the people here. It'll be a good video when the pastor wipes out.
Yeah. First time for everything.
I guess so. No, what I wanted to kind of continue on is asking the question, and wherever you're at in life, knowing that you are allowed to ask the question. You're not so much questioning God when you do it. So you're
Correct.
not
That's what I thought when I went growing up.
right.
That's the pressure, and I've talked to several people about this. It's like, oh, you can't ask that question. Well, at least the enemy's telling you that.
Yeah,
Oh, you're questioning God. That's bad.
you're not.
No.
You're not. You're
Definitely not.
that. So let's go to the expert. At what point are you questioning God in the wrong way?
That's a great question because I go, God can handle our questions, regardless of what they are. God is not super sensitive like a lot of people. If you ask, there are people, if you ask a question, they're so insecure that they can't handle the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because then they become defensive immediately.
Yeah.
But that's just it. You can sit there and go, God, why is this happening in this country? Why is this happening? That's not questioning God.
No.
Why do you do this? Why do you do this? It's not questioning God.
Yeah, and great question, because when you start reading the scriptures, you find out how many people have questioned God and in what ways. Book of Job.
Oh yeah.
Job, he's just railing on God. Now he's got hurts and pains and sorrows, and a lot of our questions come out of those, right? And he finally goes, if I had God down here, I'd ask him all of this. What's interesting, when God does come and Job stands before him on earth, and he gets asked questions, and Job doesn't ask any. But God handled all of those questions where he was going through this. Mm-hmm. David asked questions. Yeah. You start looking at and people asking God questions, and God can handle the questions. Yeah. He doesn't always answer them, and he doesn't always answer them in our time, and he doesn't always answer them the way that we want him to answer them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something to be said about that. If you're going to God wanting a specific answer, I doubt you're going to get that answer that you want.
Sometimes. I think sometimes. I think the hardest part to understand.
I guess we gotta just,
I think it depends what the question is that you're asking, right?
Yeah.
But to start down the journey of faith, especially for myself, there was never a point where, Max, you weren't like, you can't say that, you can't ask that, it was, and even now, like I don't frequent church every week, every month even.
Yeah.
Not once have you guys looked at me and said, listen, you're going down the wrong path.
Well, let me tell you. No,
right?
I know
like it's I think a lot of people feel that intimidation that we talked about.
Yeah.
And that's not where we're at. That's not what it is. That's not.
I think the most important thing is seek, and you will find.
Yes.
But look for it.
Going back to your statement, Sherry and I have come, again, we've been walking in this journey for 45 years or so now. But we've come to the place where we meet people where they are.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, and wherever that is, whether their life is really messed up. Just wherever it is, that meeting people there, meeting you where you are, and coming along with that journey. As you're coming along, Max started on that journey with you. Then Max introduced you and I, and we started that journey with the men's life group, and just that conversation around the table and asking questions. But I just think that so often we fail to meet people where they are. Whereas going back to God again, God loves to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And
that's written from the beginning to now.
absolutely.
I just sent you something like that, right? Genesis 1.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. And yeah, I think the cult. Like we've talked about this before, and I want to give you the credit because you have created this environment. I think. I'm just going to talk specifically about Wembley, and we've talked about the culture of acceptance. This is something that I've never felt. You feel pieces of it, different churches, different places, but not in a fullness. In Wembley, that has stuck, and I think the time of growing to this period of where we're at now, it's like I still think God has more planned for that. Yeah. But that culture of acceptance is critical because that is where people feel on the outside.
So
I've talked to so many people about that.
Yeah. So I mean, let's take it in this direction here. What does that question look like? That first question that you have to ask, right? How do I live this life? Who do you ask?
Yeah. Who do you ask?
And then you can start by asking God.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. And just like, even my story, my journey, it was like it popped up and it was like I knew where I needed to go. How do I get there?
Yeah.
What happened next?
Mm-hmm.
Who did God bring into your life,
Max
right?
came into my life.
You think of Mike.
Yes.
you know Mike, and you've been part of the group there when Mike comes in, and Mike was somehow God was starting him on this journey, and he met Max and Lauren, and the conversations that they had.
He was Catholic originally.
Yeah,
Raised Catholic.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you never know where people are in life, right? And like you say, we meet them where they are.
Yeah.
God's
We're always
orchestrating
ready.
that. Exactly.
Yeah, and that culture of acceptability.
Peter, always be ready.
Yes. Correct. Yep.
That culture of acceptability, you really find that in Jesus, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is
his
what
story about who he hangs out with.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, sinners, right? Who are they?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. You and me.
Everybody.
All of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So first, don't think that you're not worthy.
Yeah.
Right? Second, ask. Just ask a question.
I think about the worst insult that the Pharisees thought they were throwing at Jesus was the greatest of compliments. What was that? Friend of sinners.
Yeah.
I know.
It went black. I was like, it was
of
on the tip
sinners.
of my tongue, and I was about to say it, and then it went away.
Could you imagine if just the Pharisees had their way and Jesus only hung out with righteous people?
Yeah, exactly.
And as those righteous people died and passed on, no more were being born.
Yeah.
Because they weren't righteous.
Yeah. Well, and you now have a box where you no longer have that culture of acceptance.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
There's an inside and an outside.
It's gone.
But see, that's a picture.
Yeah,
of the
Jesus
temple.
blew that all completely away, didn't he?
needed
Exactly.
to.
It's a picture of the temple. So, for example, like we're talking back in their day, they would have understood this.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily understand the depth of that, but when you have that when you have that box, well, when Jesus did what he did for us, he met sinner. He was a friend of sinners.
Yeah.
He basically laid that foundation and built the culture of acceptance, and then tore the curtain, which they would have understood to be like, oh, everybody has access now.
Yeah.
Everybody can, we're all accepted if we're willing to.
I think there's two things I like to say in regards to that. Every time that I've read that Friend of Sinners, and I go, wow, I'm so glad for that, because, I recognize myself as being such a sinner, right?
Exactly.
And if Jesus was willing, he would accept me into that and be my friend as well. And I go, I'm a sinner and I need a friend, and Jesus is that friend.
And this is a pastor.
Yeah,
It's like that's what I'm trying to get at. Like where people think,
Yeah.
nah, I've done
There's
some
levels,
things in my
yeah.
life. I could never be accepted by Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you
Yeah.
can.
Mm-hmm.
You can.
And and I go on with that, and I remember I pastored a number of churches, some small, some large, in my years, and I've watched where in the church you're talking about this, the Pharisees, and you're talking about this box, and you're talking about this group actually, and I've watched people come into the church that are outside, and they're going, I don't know if I'm going to be accepted here. I don't know if I'm going to be wanted here. I don't know if I'll be welcomed here. Yeah. And I watch, and there's a circle. You can call it a clique of friends. You can call it whatever it is. And sometimes it comes along ethnic lines. Sometimes it comes on, just simply because of people doing the same things together. But I've often watched, because many times I've felt like that myself. Because you're a pastor, everyone goes, well, everybody accepts you, not necessarily. And so you
you're
can,
perfect.
Yeah, you can be the pastor, and still people hold you outside of that circle, that friendship circle. And so, but I've watched people coming in, and they'll see a group over here, and a group over here, and another group over here. And you can almost hear them saying, I'd like to be accepted like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to be in that circle. I'd like to be friends, in that circle. And you watch, and the circle doesn't open. It actually closes when that person comes near. And Jesus never did that.
No. One of the things, I think that's why
Peter tried to stop it.
Yeah.
But Jesus was like,
relax, man. Yeah, relax.
Relax. Go have some of the water.
Exactly.
Chill
out, bro.
Chill. Have some of the water. You'll be surprised. Relax. What do you want to say to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the box, like, I think that's why the command of love each other as I've loved you. I think like he showed us that's kind of sums up what that looks like. And I think because that person that's on the outside of that group, all they wanted is to be a part of that group. What does it feel like when they're accepted into that group? There's love shown towards them. And I think Jesus showed that love to everybody regardless. And if we're not willing to do that, and we're going to build a wall or build a group or a clique or whatever we want to do, then how are we actually loving that person? Because deep down, we all just want to be accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked a lot about asking the question. So if you are outside of that group, know that you can talk to us. You can ask. You can say, hey, what's up with that?
Yeah,
you don't,
exactly.
and there's no follow through, right? There's no expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Of it, right? Like
expectation or judgment.
Like, hey, Max, I noticed you're actually someone, I won't say the name. You know them.
Yeah.
They said, hey man, I just haven't talked to you in a while, but I noticed you're doing this. I was like, hey, I know that guy. And then all of a sudden I started listening to this podcast that you're talking on, and it's like, oh, I didn't know he was, he had faith like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's pretty interesting knowing that this is the route you're taking, the path you're taking. And like, I totally respect it. Yeah. It was someone that you would never, you would think if they brought it up that it would just be like, just up one side and down the other.
Yeah.
But they were so cool with it. Mm-hmm. And they asked a question about it, and I was like, this is where I was at, and this is where I wanted to go. I asked a question, Max was there, and we kind of went from there.
We met online.
right? That's where this conversation took place.
Exactly.
You know, and
yeah.
and it's like there's no. I don't expect him to be like. I wasn't like watch the rest of them. You have to now that you asked.
Yeah.
You have to watch now. You brought it up. You know, there's none of that. It's like
Yeah.
I'll answer this question,
Yeah.
and that's it. I'm not gonna bombard you. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
try and like hand you pamphlets
Yeah.
and books.
Kelsey, I don't know what we're
Amazing.
at for
Oh,
time.
we're on a roll.
That's okay.
We're cruising.
Can we split this one?
Maybe
can we alter it without?
I-
Can you do it?
I think we might just leave this. I think everyone. Hopefully, you're liking it.
Yeah, I think it's really good. But one of the things I wanted to say before we wrap this up is that find people that will
Yes.
join you in that life, you know, and
You'd
that
be
you.
surprised who they are.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so if
And
but
they're
if you
there.
don't if you
They
don't
are
find
there.
the ones that'll accept you into that, keep looking and watching
Yep.
for the individuals, or
Yep.
keep watching for a group that will open up
Yeah.
and let you be part of that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I've found there's more people right now that are there's a
Openly
movement.
looking for it.
There's
Yeah.
people looking, but there's also people willing to
Yeah.
to welcome you in.
that are ready.
Yeah.
We are all ready.
Yeah.
Correct.
No matter what level.
Yeah. And right now,
I shouldn't say level.
specifically,
That's very Scientology. Not level. I mean like where they're at.
You're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, okay.
and I
So-
think specifically for our time in our time in history for us at the moment,
yeah.
we're at a critical point to come together.
Yes.
Because right now everybody's trying to split everybody
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
and,
and
that
I think-
that barrier
You
needs
use
to
that
be.
word.
I know that barrier needs to be torn down.
I think that's what our society and governments and so on did in the last 5 years, and I think there's a deep longing and
Yeah,
100%.
There is. There's people,
across borders,
just
Yeah.
like Matt said,
everywhere.
there's people
Yeah.
looking for it, and there's people ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know,
truth be told.
yes,
That's what we're
Yes.
here for.
really though, what that essentially looks like. I mean, in my opinion, it's not. I don't know. To me, right now, at my point in life,
That's Christ building His church.
the commitment doesn't look like anything. You know, the commitment is like, I surrender. I surrender. And you know what? Like I said, I jumped in the background there. I said there's things 5 years ago that would have got right to me and flipped me upside down. Now
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah.
what's next? There's a reason. There's a reason this is happening.
Yep. And but the simplicity, the surrender
Yes.
daily,
Yeah.
because I forget that.
Yeah.
I forget that daily.
Oh man, we
Yeah.
better. I'm
But
sure
anyway,
one of these cameras is gonna turn off.
Yeah.
The simplicity of the surrendering daily brings you back to that place where He can refine you.
So how are you? How are you surrendering daily? Let us know in the comments. And do you have a question?
Yeah.
Do you want to ask the question? You don't have to do it in the comments. You can send a message. You can find any of us, All the Nations. You can go to All the Nations. You can send a message there. You can send a message to Max. You can send a message to myself.
You can send a message to TriPack.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
White Lightning Media.
You know, there's 3 people right here that I know I don't have all the answers, but I know I've got people behind me that have quite a few more than me. So this is where you can ask that question. Again, doesn't have to be in the comments. It could be behind the scenes. You could run into us out in the street. But that's the truth be told.
Yeah.